Senator Rounds. Senator King, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, congratulations on your meteoric rise to the chairmanship. Mr. Berto, I was really interested in your approach during the Reagan years of defining the scenario and then defining the strategy to meet it. I can't believe isn't that what's done now? I would assume that's exactly what's done. Or is it being done in too broad a sense without focusing on particular scenarios that will require a particular response?
So I should probably clarify my use of the words, right? So you have an operational plan, which from my perspective and history is the today fight with the forces today in the theaters they're in. Scenarios can go beyond that, both in terms of time and in terms of geography. And what we had in the Cold War was almost no difference between the operational plan, the fight today, and what the long-term scenario would look like. Today, as we just heard in the discussion in response to Senator Rounds' question, we have a wide variety of potential conflicts that could arise. In addition, we've got the—
But still, shouldn't we, within that wide variety, we should try to choose the most likely? You can't just throw up your hands and say we have a very complex situation and therefore we can't have a specific response. Shouldn't we be saying, okay, this is the most likely scenario and that's what we should be preparing for?
So I think you're right. So you need to figure out what you're going to base your requirements on and what you're going to spend your money on, right, and what comes first. You have to have a mechanism for prioritization. I think it's probably a combination of likelihood and probability, and I'm certainly not qualified to put those on there. But it's also a question of where's the greatest stressors and what are the vulnerabilities if we can't combine or meet those stressors. That could, in fact, require an integration across multiple scenarios to look at what's the aggregated or combined impact and effect, and where are the greatest things where we need to put our resources first. We will never have enough money to do everything.
Correct.
So the question is, where do you put it first?
The likelihood. A very quick, easy question for everybody. Can we all agree that continuing resolutions absolutely are not part of the solution to this problem?
Franklin Roosevelt did not face a single continuing resolution in the entire build-up to World War II and the execution thereof.
Yes, I concur.
All of you agree with that. And that's, of course, that's one of the difficulties that we're in now, and it creates all kinds of downstream effects with regard to the industrial base and preparation, everything else. Well, thank you for that. Let the record show continuing resolutions are not the way to do business, particularly in the defense area. All of you have mentioned something very interesting, which is allies are part of the solution. And it concerns me that we seem to be embarked on a course that at least is not encouraging to our allies, and in some cases is definitely poking our allies in the eye. Talk to me about the importance of allies in dealing with the production necessary for a significant conflict, whether it's Japan, the UK, Canada, or other countries.
Our allies' importance are a key part of our industrial base, and we have a number of agreements and collaborative programs. I mean, the largest fighter program in the world, the F-35, we have a dozen partner countries, I believe.
So we cannot do this by ourselves. Is that a fair answer?
That's correct. That's correct.
All of you are nodding. Could you say yes? Because nods don't show up in the record.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Nods don't show up in the transcript.
Exactly. Thank you. One of the problems is the consolidation within the defense industrial base. How do we go about expanding the options available? One suggestion we had from one witness earlier was to go to major manufacturing facilities, Ford Motor Company, for example, and getting them engaged in military production as well as making F-150s. How do we expand the industrial base? Everybody comes here and says we need to expand the industrial base. Give me some practical suggestions as to how that might happen. Go ahead.
Senator, it's a great question. And I think, one, we have to recognize the consolidation industrial base, people talk about it, it's largely a function of spending. During the Cold War, during the 80s, when Mr. Berto was in the Pentagon, we were spending 5.5%, 6% of GDP. Now we're spending around 3%. So you're going to have less companies, in the overall ecosystem. And then, as something that Dr. McKenzie mentioned, is that when your acquisition is focused on efficiencies, you want to buy the right system for the right time, and then what that ends up with is very limited production runs and/or production runs that last for, when you have platform programs like the F-35, the Bradley fighting vehicle, the Abrams tank, they last for 40 years. And so you have a prime contractor that has that market position. So my argument is that to change the dynamic, we have to change how we buy, which means buying more systems, buying from multiple sources, and you can do that very much. You can do that very much with unmanned systems, with some of the platform systems. You can do that as well. There's been a lot of work done on second sourcing back in the 70s and 80s, where we're buying munitions from 2 suppliers, and that reduces costs. So there are ways you can increase competition by changing your buying approach. And that has to get away from some of the efficiency focus and more on what capabilities and capacities do we need.
And one of the particular things that ought to be part of this is modularity, so that you can upgrade without having to upgrade the entire platform. Ms. McKinney, is that correct?
Madam Chair, would you indulge me for one sentence? We just don't buy enough to keep more companies in business. We just don't buy enough. The reason we only have 2.5 manufacturers of tactical missiles is we only buy enough to keep 2.5 companies in business.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Sheehy, you are recognized.